up your horses.
Pitter patter, let's get at her. It is another episode of the Manely Broncos Podcast. We want to say thank you guys so much for hopping in with us. It is going to be a fantastic show as we talk about the future, that being the Denver Broncos franchise. We certainly have a lot to talk about today. Of course, the news that broke just before we were hitting record. We want to say thank you, to the Denver Broncos for releasing this information. Not during the podcast. So we just want to start things first off with the Russell Wilson news and how they're going to spread out the cap hit. We want to, reach out and say a quick little thank you to the Denver Broncos on that. Before we dive into any of the Russell Wilson stuff and of course, his off-season content, which, it kicked off today officially, of course, how are you doing, Brandon? You doing good? Yeah, you're back. You're back from Arizona. You don't have to worry about necessarily maybe bad Wi-Fi.
It wasn't really Wi-Fi. I mean, it was Wi-Fi, but it was also I was trying to do it from my phone, which is 0 out of 10. But I'm good. I'm kind of like bored because I wish we were doing more in free agency, just because that's like every NFL fan's dream when the height of the offseason, you're like, I need more football. And like you can tide yourself over with like thinking about the big splash free agency signings that your team makes. And we haven't done any of those, but you know what? I'm as much as I don't have that, I'm kind of glad that we're not recklessly blowing money. So
yeah. Again, we want to say, hey, thank you guys so much for upping, and make sure you hit that subscribe button. Hit that subscribe button over on the MHRT Network page over there on YouTube. And if you guys are watching on the X platform or Twitter platform, we want to have you guys chime in. Your guys' comment through X and Twitter will show up now on the stream. So feel free to chime in. And of course, with the breaking news that happened about, I'd say 20 or 30 minutes ago, I'm sure there's a lot to talk about that certain subject. So, again, we want to say, hey, thank you again. And make sure you, again, follow both Brandon and I on our socials. They're on the picture, as you see there, Cameron Parker PO and Brandon Miller PO. Certainly a lot to digest, and it's probably worth, Brandon, we lead off, first and foremost with the big news. Oh, and by the way, Big Mike chimes in. He's listening while driving through Boston with the windows down. Don't get Bostonians mad about anything because they might hear you. Are you sure? Because I feel like I don't know. I feel like, if we say the Broncos will in fact trade up to 3, that could piss them off a little bit.
No, I have a better one. Nuggets versus Celtics. What happened?
Okay. Yeah.
Take that L on the way out.
Hey Clayton, what's up, man? Thank you again, man. And obviously you checked out the Sports Nonsense and Whiskey podcast, where we did get a chance to talk a little bit about the Broncos. But Clayton, you are in luck. We will talk about that Denver Broncos team, of course, and everything about, of course, the Russell Wilson news that broke about 20 minutes ago. So all right, Brandon. we were all speculating, and I will say a fair amount of people were speculating that the Denver Broncos were actually going to be taking the less money on, in year 1 versus year 2, right? That was the early speculation, is that the Broncos were going to be taking the $32 million in cap hit for year 1 and then the $53 million in year 2. Well, as it turns out, in about 20 or so, as we said, leading up to this 20 to 30 minutes ago, it was announced that Russell Wilson will be a post-June 1st designation, and that the Denver Broncos will spread out the money in reverse order, meaning that the Denver Broncos will be taking on $53 million in its first year, And then in its second year, they will be taking on the $32 million in cap in that year too. So when you kind of look at it from the standpoint, we'll talk about free agency, we'll talk about the moves that they made and the impact that they will have on this football team, Brandon. But from a overall perspective, and especially with how they even attacked free agency, sure makes a lot of sense with how they've been able to attack this, and especially too, and again, we'll talk about the free agency stuff and their moves, but when you're planning ahead and you're looking at the moves that are geared for the future, guys like Pat Surtain, Gwen Miners, makes a lot of sense to possibly roll that $32 million into year two.
Well, this was like kind of the I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, I guess, situation. This was the situation. This is the domino. This is a better term. The domino decision that I was watching, because depending on what we did here, this was going to be, to me, the biggest signal of like what our plan is in terms of like, are we going to like sit this year out and it's going to be like just a complete redshirt year? They're going to take the entire dead cap hit in 1 year and just like restart next year and go into it maybe with even a higher draft pick. And I don't want to say tank, but maybe it's like kind of tank, sort of tank, like slightly tank, set yourself up for success next year. Or are we going to try to start something this year? And by that, I mean, like, maybe go after like getting maybe not a free agent quarterback, but going after like a rookie quarterback and not taking a full redshirt year. And
Right.
It seems to me like that is more of that's more of the vibe of what I'm getting now, with them deciding to split it up the way that they did. Like, we're still taking a massive cap hit this year, don't get me wrong, but we're not taking the whole 85 something million in 1 year, which to me just signals like, no, we're going to kick the can. We're going to like delay it. This year means nothing. I mean, there were some moves that they made that made me kind of think that was happening. Specifically the Justin Simmons release, which just stings. And sucks, and especially because you have his jersey behind you on the wall, and I've looked at it every single Wednesday for as long as we've been doing this, which really sucked. But I don't know. I mean, they seem to do a good job of getting some of that cap back. There were some moves that haven't been made yet that we kind of figured were going to happen, like DJ Jones. I think we pretty much all kind of just said that he was going to be like, he was the guaranteed.
Right.
We were going to release him. And that hasn't happened.
One of the first people that rolled off the tongue, if you will.
Right. Like, I know we briefly touched on Justin Simmons. We didn't expect that to happen, but that did happen. Garrett Bowles is the other big one. Garrett Bowles is the other domino that I don't know what's happening. And that also, to me, that's going to be the next thing I'm keeping my eye on, because if we keep Garrett Bowles, to me, like, we're trying to get a rookie. We might trade up to get a rookie. We're going to try to start this rebuild now. We're going to have someone that is maybe going to play meaningful snaps at quarterback this year, and we don't want to throw them in there with a patchwork offensive line that has a struggling but good against the run right tackle, or good for the run but struggling in pass pro right tackle. New center, because Cushenberry officially signed elsewhere. Obviously we retain the guards, but like, that's a lot of shakeup with a new center, potentially a new left tackle, and a right tackle that's only in year 2 on this team that was already kind of, I don't know if I'd say embattled is the right term, but he kind of struggled a little bit. He wasn't fantastic in McGlinchey, who they also kind of restructured, which gave them some cap relief. But to me, like, Garrett Bowles is the next big thing. If Garrett Bowles was released, I they might still look at this year as maybe like I'm not gonna say a reload year, but kind of like let's just
Very,
stop,
very close to rebuild.
get as many. And I think we do need to rebuild. Like, don't get me wrong, I think we need to rebuild, but
It's not.
there's multiple ways you can go about it. You don't always have to do what it looked like we were maybe going to do, which was eat the whole cap hit this year and just like say no, screw it, we're just going to suck this year and we're going to set ourselves up for success next year. And Parker, nothing yet. That's what I'm saying. So sorry if you just tuned in. Nothing has happened with Garrett Bowles. That's what I'm like. That's the biggest next domino to me after we saw what they did with how they structured releasing Russell Wilson. To me, the next domino is what happens with Garrett Bowles. Right now, nothing.
Actually,
but if they keep him, don't tell me that something just happened.
No.
If they keep him, I'm thinking like I'm more inclined to believe we're probably going to try to draft a rookie. If they don't keep him, they let him go. To me, that signals okay. We're maybe even going to roll with Jarrett Stidham and kind of retool restock the cupboard a little bit and go after a quarterback next year. But we're going to kind of maybe not take a full redshirt year, but maybe have accepted that this is going to be like. We're just going to not be competitive. We're going to get as many assets as we can, and we're going to go after someone next year. But that could be the plan still. But if we keep Garrett Bowles, to me, we're going after a rookie. That's what all of this says to me. But
so there's
that one other.
Here's the thing: is like I've already kind of like necessarily been in this rookie quarterback camp already. You know that the Broncos are going to be going with the quarterback. In fact, I've been rolling with the theory, Brandon, right, that the Broncos had Jarrett Stidham in mind last year, and with the idea that it was the bridge, that he was the bridge for that rookie quarterback, right? So I've kind of already been planning for that. What's up, Kamani? What's up, Kamani? As far as we'll get to Cushenberry. I will say just on the surface, they let Cushenberry leave. I think for one, they just weren't going to afford him. Not with
he was too expensive.
Not with the money that they were, probably ideally would have wanted to sign him for. And of course, with the Russell Wilson contract and everything that they were taking on, it just really didn't make any sense. And plus,
he's gotten by far the highest center contract of all the ones that have signed.
And plus, if you remember at the NFL Combine, George Payton and Sean Payton spoke very glowingly about Alex Forsythe and Luke Wattenberg. Alex Forsythe probably a little bit more so for them being the center. And I will say, too, as far as some good news, it does seem like the Broncos will be likely getting a comp pick for Luke Cushenberry next year. So that's something else to monitor, of course. And as far as, Garrett Bowles, nothing's happened with Garrett Bowles. But the reason why when you talked about it and the reason why I kind of lumped the quarterback here in together, is I have to give a shout out to friend of the program, and he's commented on the show. Maybe he's actually stalking us now and watching the show here tonight. But Carter Dillon, he and I were talking the other day, and he mentioned, and again, like I love Justin Simmons a lot. As you guys can see, every Wednesday I have his jersey hung up on my wall. But if you were to go, and you alluded to this, if you are to go with a young rookie quarterback, if you're going to go with a young rookie quarterback, I actually let me and just give the short answer, because obviously you already alluded to it, Brandon. Who helps a quarterback more? Justin Simmons or Garrett Bowles?
Garrett Bowles by far, not even close.
Yeah, exactly. And and again, as much as I love Justin and everything that he has meant to me and the fan base of Broncos country and the team overall, if the idea is, and also in terms of the money and the aspect of everything that they were going to go with there, and then going with the idea of taking that $53 million into effect this year, it really felt like Garrett Bowles was the direction that they were going to go. And frankly, I will say both are enticing options for a quarterback. but I will say the next domino to fall. This is where I'm kind of leading it with the decision of what they will do. You said Garrett Bowles. I will actually say I think the next domino and the next idea of maybe where they might go is the decision of not just what they do with Garrett Bowles, but what they do with Cortland Sutton. Because we both know that Cortland Sutton, you know, is also a position that's going to help a young quarterback too, right? But if we are in this, if we are in the notion that they're going to roll with the young quarterback and they have an offensive draft that they can work with, it may be better to move on from Cortland Sutton, acquire that draft capital that they've needed badly, and replace both Jerry Jeudy, who they were able to acquire draft capital for, which actually I was a bit surprised on some of the draft capital they did get in return, and in the exception of it was just a boundary outside of a top 100 draft pick, for Jerry Jeudy. So that's actually a significant win. And when you even consider the fact that both those draft picks are at the top of each round. So that's kind of a massive win, if you will, for the Broncos. But as far as Sutton, you can easily replace a guy like a Jerry Jeudy and a Cortland Sutton in this year alone with this draft. So if you do have the idea of going out and getting a quarterback, right, Brandon, you may as well kind of treat it like a high school recruiting class and build it around him with this class. So if you do any remaining needs in free agency, and we'll touch on this, but if you do any remaining needs in free agency, just build the defense up a little bit with some shrewd moves, some shrewd signings, bring them in, and then go to the draft and build what you feel is your identity for the offense.
Well, so and I'm gonna say I disagree slightly, and the reason I'm disagree slightly to what you just said is I think even if we release or trade trade Cortland Sutton, well, I guess he could be released, but it's more likely to be a trade. I think that to me that's not as much of that's not as indicative of what we're trying to do this offseason in terms of, are we going to go after a rookie quarterback, or are we going to have a redshirt year? Are we going to just roll with Stidham, or what's going to happen? The main reason I say that is obviously they did find a way to keep Tim Patrick around and restructured his deal, so he's staying. He was kind of another one of those guys that it was like easy. It was low hanging fruit, honestly, of this guy's probably going to be released to trying to get cap. He has a decent savings that we can get. We've really not seen much of him for 2 seasons, which really sucks, but because I love Tim Patrick, but it was kind of like, felt like the writing was on the wall, but we found a way to keep him. And that says a lot to me of what they feel about him. But I don't think they feel like they can put all their eggs in one basket there. And obviously they don't. Like, you have Marvin Mims, you still have Cortland Sutton. There's other options in free agency, which we can get into. There's obviously a very good draft class full of wide receivers. And to me, that's where the biggest, that's like the biggest opportunity here that I know we talked about, and it's obvious, but even if we trade Cortland Sutton, I'm not going to then think that, like, I'm still pretty, let's say we trade Cortland Sutton, but we keep Garrett Bowles. I'm still pretty confident that we're going to try to go after a rookie quarterback, because with the way that
that's fair,
this class is shaping up, you can get 1 or 2 even very good, maybe even starting caliber wide receivers
on day 2
and on day 2. And with the way that wide receivers are coming into the NFL and like immediately contributing in a big way, you can replace Cortland Sutton. I mean, I don't want to say replace, because that just sounds like I'm disrespecting Cortland Sutton. No disrespect to Cortland Sutton. I love Cortland Sutton, but you can lessen the impact of losing him by a lot, because it's not like, do I think we're going to get 100% of what Cortland Sutton offered us from a rookie? No. Do I think we could get 75% to 80% of Cortland Sutton? Maybe. Like, rookies are coming in and absolutely just blowing it up. For all I know, we could find the next Justin Jefferson, and he comes in and he's 120% of Cortland Sutton. I don't know. But, like, even if we trade Cortland Sutton, the biggest thing to me is still, did we keep Garrett Bowles? Because left tackle is one of those positions that, one, is just incredibly important. It's also very hard to find. And there's a bit of a learning curve, like really with both tackle spots and the center position. A lot of the offensive line has a big learning curve, but it's hard and more difficult to see a rookie left tackle come in and make a meaningful impact as a starter and not cost their team. Or I should say it's more likely and it's more common that you see them come in and they do struggle and they have rookie moments. Garrett Bowles proved that himself, unfortunately, before he kind of turned it around, and good for him with that. But I think he's still the biggest, to me, domino. I get what you're saying with Cortland Sutton, but I do think there's a situation where even if Cortland Sutton is gone, I wouldn't be surprised if we even try to go after trading up for a rookie if we really like that a rookie QB in this class and still feel confident that we can take a wide receiver that gives you most of what you lost.
Oh, no, I was in the same conversation, the same vein as you. I was just going from the financial side of things, like, if you're looking at it from the side of who's left in terms of the biggest key factors that they will move on from, at least at this point.
Oh, you just meant like, okay. I was thinking you were saying like, that's the biggest domino that's left other than Garrett Bowles in terms of like signaling what they're going to be doing.
Right. Wow. And that's what I'm saying. Cause like, if they keep Cortland, it still could signal that they're going to go and get a young quarterback. Cause we know that a wide receiver like that could help a young quarterback, but we know, and this is how I feel, they're probably leaning to the side that they're going to keep Garrett Bowles. And that's why I'm leaning that way. And they'll figure what to do with Cortland Sutton. But even then, if you find a way to keep both,
we have the space to keep both now.
Yeah,
for sure.
But I will say, regardless, though, like even if you keep both, the fact that Garrett Bowles is on the roster, though, is the significant move to what you talked about. The significant move that you are more than likely going for a quarterback. Now,
well, so far, as far as we know, he could still be released or traded. I have heard nothing about him, but the last I had seen is that he doesn't really want to stick around. So we'll see what happens there. But if we're able to keep him and we try to push to keep him, to me, that signals like we're going to try to maybe go after a rookie and not place him in a position where he has a less skilled left tackle and is going into just a worse offensive line protecting him. Like, if you want to have a rookie come in, you want to put him in the best situation possible. That's obvious. Having a brand new center, a slightly struggling right tackle, good guards, and I'm not saying we can't get a starting serviceable left tackle, but you're not going to get a tackle of Garrett Bowles' caliber in free agency anymore, really, without spending a lot of, I don't even think there's one left, without spending a lot of money. And you're probably not going to get that level as a rookie through the draft, and especially not if you're not getting one of those top guys because you're spending your pick
on probably
pick, and maybe for several picks if you're doing a trade on a quarterback. So I think if we see him released or traded, to me, I'm interested to see what happens, but that's telling me that we're not targeting a quarterback. So we'll see. But anyway, it was definitely interesting that we saw the news come out that Russell Wilson was a post June 1st cut. And I think that's the best option. That was the best option.
Yeah.
To me, because
aside from the $85 million in year one.
Well, I don't think that was the best option. I think it was an option. It was an option that you could take if you were going to just eat it all at once and say, I pushed for that option because, again, especially when we released Justin Simmons, I was like, we're not going to be competitive.
Yeah, you might as well just
go ahead and eat it all, have a redshirt year. We're going to suck anyway. We've already sucked for 8 years. Who cares? But I was still, again, waiting to see what do they do with the contract and the release of Wilson. And they've shown their hand there, if you will. And that makes me think like that might not be the plan. That's all.
Let's go a little bit into free agency, and we might as well just lead off with the quarterback position. You talked about showing their hand. I will say this for Sean Payton, or even a team that has prided themselves on secrecy, like Jason Bourne secrecy. Right now, the Broncos are the worst kept secret in the NFL for the direction that they are probably going to be going in the NFL draft, and that is quarterback. And with free agency, you don't really need to look no further than the moves that are really happening. And I can't believe I'm actually saying this. The moves that are actually happening from the backup quarterback perspective, or the bridge quarterback perspective. So let's just go down the line here. Before we actually talk about the significant one, Gardner Minshew signs actually a significant deal to go to the Las Vegas Raiders. You have Joe Flacco, who actually signed with the Indianapolis Colts. Mason Rudolph obviously was a very, very popular name. He went and signed with the Tennessee Titans.
Jacoby Brissett to me was the even more popular name, and he stayed in New England.
He stayed in New England.
He went back to New England? He went back to New England because he left for, he was at Washington. So he went back to New England.
Yeah, so he went to New England. And then you have Marcus Mariota, who went and signed with the Washington Commanders. This one necessarily doesn't have any bearing. But you had a former name, Brett Rippon, signed with the Chicago Bears, I believe it was today. But a lot of moves have transpired from that backup quarterback perspective. And I tweeted my thoughts on this a little bit. And we may as well just talk about it first, and we'll get it done and out of the way, and we'll talk about the other moves that the Broncos made after this.
Well, it's funny to me that you are describing them as a backup quarterback. Go ahead.
Well, I say backup.
No, I get why you say it, but
yeah.
Go ahead.
So, Sam Darnold, and this leads us to Sam Darnold. Of all the quarterbacks that the Broncos have been rumored and interested in, and even having conversations, Sam Darnold was the quarterback that the Broncos were the most linked to. And they were interested. We should probably preface this. They were interested in Sam Darnold, but they didn't hand out a contract offer. Probably, you know why? They didn't want to sign a 1-year, $10 million contract. Now, there's probably some hints of that, meaning it doesn't necessarily take the Minnesota Vikings obviously off the board for them taking a quarterback at pick 11. But it could signal maybe the players that the Denver Broncos may be interested in the draft. That's a side note and a side point between maybe not just them, but the Minnesota Vikings. I also think too, where do the Broncos actually go here for options? Because the options now have been significantly dwindled. And I will say this, I know that you tweeted it. I kind of tweeted it to a certain extent, but then the more I kind of had time to process it a little bit, I am under the assumption if you do trade for Justin Fields, again, I'm under the assumption of this, you were probably saying to yourself, Justin Fields is a better prospect than anybody that is in this year's class. And so in doing so, no, but I know it's still worth a debate. In terms of trading for him and rolling the dice on this. But I feel like once you trade for him and you trade that capital, again, this is why I say I'm under the assumption, you may as well take on his 5th-year option. And that's the layer of this to where I'm like, you may
No,
as
you're
well
not trading for him if you're not taking the 5th-year option.
So if you take his 5th-year
That's-
option, you may as well build the offense around him and really make him your guy that you want to build around. Certainly tempting, but you're also giving up capital and you're committing to, a guy like a 5th-year option, and to, as many have stated, maybe a quarterback that maybe Sean doesn't necessarily want to work with stylistically with what he maybe have had with Russell Wilson. Now there's Sam Howell. Sam Howell is the fascinating one in the sense of he's much more cheaper than Justin Fields, but by that same token, you're giving up draft capital again. And so I just don't know.
Cheaper, you mean cheaper to trade for?
Contract. Because I feel like the capital of giving it up at this point, the way that the Bears have certainly handled the situation with Justin Fields, you may as well just see if there's any way you can maybe give up one of your 5th-round picks or something like that, because you do have 3 of them now. You give up one of your 3 of your 5th-round picks, if you will, for a guy like Justin Fields or even a Sam Howell. But like for Sam Howell, this is the part that is just, it is what it is. But Sam Howell was part of a underwhelming quarterback class with Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell, Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder. Is Sean Payton really convinced? I mean, Howell did have a pretty solid year with the Commanders last year. There's no doubt about it. But I think that the question we really have to ask ourselves is, do the Denver Broncos, or specifically Sean Payton, love those prospects, Justin Fields and Sam Howell, more than this particular draft class? And if so, make that aggressive play, trade for them, and then might as well roll the dice on that. And then also, too, I have a hard time believing the fact that, going back to Minnesota, if Minnesota is in fact involved with a draft quarterback, especially, and knowing the history that we now know with Sean Payton and being public about missing out on a guy like a Patrick Mahomes and doing that trade up, I have a very, very hard time believing that he will, at this point, then be outbidded for the quarterback of his choosing in the draft, especially when it comes to Minnesota again.
So I don't know if I agree with if you trade for Justin Fields is getting into it.
That's a lot.
If you trade for Justin Fields, that you think that he's like, you have him ranked higher than any potential prospects in this draft class. And the main reason I say that, there's no way Justin Fields costs the first, especially the longer and further this goes on. Justin Fields is probably going to cost a 4th, maybe a 5th. If you get Justin Fields for a 5th, like, to me, that's just a low risk, high reward option. You're spending almost nothing for him. You have 3 5th-round picks. Yes, you're giving up a pick, but come on, it's the 5th round. Like, could you land a starter in the 5th round? Sure. But you get to the 5th round and you're basically just throwing darts. I'd rather throw a dart at Justin Fields at the quarterback position, which is the most important in sports, with a 5th, than some corner or tackle that is going to be your 3rd string developmental guy that might not even be on the roster next year. Like, could you get a starter with that pick, nail the pick? Sure. But maybe even if it's 4th, even if it's a 4th, same thing. Like, I don't think that signals that you think he's better than the rest of the quarterbacks in this class. Is it possible that they believe that? Sure. I don't know. But the reason that, the reason I say that is, like, it's just such a low investment compared to, you're looking at the top 12 picks, pretty high likelihood, especially with Minnesota being immediately in front of you. None of those quarterbacks are falling to 12. Like, you never know, but
yeah,
right now my gut tells me none of them are falling to 12. You're going to have to trade up to get them. And you don't even know if you can trade up. You have to have a willing partner. Then you have to find...
And of course, we're talking about the top 4, not the 5.
Yeah, you have to find a willing partner. Then you have to find a trade package that you agree on. Then you have to still give up a significant amount of capital to move up and do that. So to me, again, is it possible that you like Justin Fields more? sure, but I think it's more likely that you just think it's easier to acquire him.
But
And
so
let me ask you this question. Let's
yeah.
say it's a 4th-round pick. And this guy might even go higher than this, for all I know. Would
Mhm.
you rather have Justin Fields, or would you rather draft quarterback from Tulane, whose name I'm totally forgetting?
Michael Pratt.
Michael Pratt.
I mean, I probably would roll with Justin Fields. I mean,
Yeah.
sure. But see,
And
here's
like he comes in, maybe he's great, and he had horrible offensive coaches in Chicago, and
Huh.
he until recently had basically no main wide receiver. Maybe he comes in, he's great. Maybe he comes in and he's just a guy who can push Jarrett Stidham a little bit and create some competition, which is always good. Maybe he comes in and he becomes your backup. Maybe he comes in and he's going to just compete with the starter you eventually end up drafting, or the rookie. Maybe that's a rookie next year. And maybe it's even rookie this year. Maybe you could trade a 5th for him, thinking, you know what? We don't know what's going to happen, but we like him. We can get him. And maybe you still end up with JJ McCarthy. I'd
Yeah.
rather have a quarterback room of, and yes, I know the whole, if you have 2, you have none, but like
Oh, yeah.
JJ McCarthy would obviously be the starter. Like he's going to be the starter on this team, but you give me a quarterback room of those 2 guys. He can push him. He's been in the league, and worst case scenario, he's a good backup, and you get him for a 5th-round pick. Do it.
Yeah. But again, like, to preface the whole Justin Fields thing, it's all under the assumption about that 5th-year option. So like what you described, making that trade, if I was told, that the Broncos are going to trade for Justin Fields and not pick up the 5th-year option, and actually, like, it's a foregone conclusion they will not pick up the 5th-year option, then by all means, I would absolutely trade for Justin Fields. But the reason why I'm a little bit on the fence of that is because of the 5th-year option, and I'm convinced the moment you trade for him, you're committing to the 5th-year option. If they decided not to do the whole 5th-year option, then yeah, by all means, I would do that trade, because even then, I think I don't want to go down a massive bunny trail on it, but obviously it's funny. I was just going to say
I don't think you're gonna.
What?
That.
But I was just gonna say Robert Garcia was actually like leading me to this, but like I think the fit stuff with Justin Fields and Sean Payton is a bit overblown. But by that same token, though, I also feel like Sean Payton now, and the way that things have been shaping up in free agency, from the bridge backup quarterback perspective, and the options being significantly dwindled, everything that you are seeing it unfold is that the Broncos have, it seems like more and more, week by week, month by month, that they have fallen in love with the quarterback, or a quarterback in mind, in the 2024 draft. However, they certainly acquire him and draft him, and build around him. That's anyone's guess of who that particular quarterback is. However, and it was asked to me of last night, and Brandon, I think you were kind of in the same mode as me. Of all the likely fit candidates for Sean Payton in this draft class, it would be JJ McCarthy and Bo Nix. Those are the 2 that are probably your best fits for the Sean Payton offense.
Yeah, and the Justin Fields a Sean Payton quarterback? I mean, that's a valid argument.
I think it's a bit overblown, though.
I do think it's a bit overblown, but I do think it's a valid argument, and the majority of the sense in that we haven't really seen Sean Payton with a quarterback like that. But I also don't think that really matters, because Sean Payton had Drew Brees for almost his entire career. Like, you have a guy like that, you don't need to see him with anyone. Like, he's just going to be your locked in. He's a Hall of Famer. You're going to stick with him until he falls off a cliff, which he never really did. Like, I don't think that means that that's the only type of quarterback that Sean Payton works with. I think you've seen that he can work with that type of quarterback.
He also doesn't care. He also
but I don't
doesn't
think
care.
that. Yeah, I don't think it means like he's going to balk at anyone else. Maybe that he's proven that he can work with those guys, and maybe that's who he prefers to work with.
Yeah.
Maybe he sees the way the league is going with Patrick Mahomes, and obviously Patrick Mahomes isn't like Josh Allen or
right.
Lamar Jackson, but he can still move a bit and like play some just backyard football. Maybe he sees the way the league is going. It's like, yeah, you know what? I kind of like that. I want a guy like that. You don't know he can't do it.
Right.
Just because he had Drew Brees, who really wasn't that. I mean, he wasn't that level of mobile by any means at all. Just because he was able to have Drew Brees for as long as he did doesn't mean he can't work with a quarterback like that.
Yeah,
you just haven't seen it.
Yeah, the other idea of that is, again, and kind of go back to this, is he had a year off, and who knows what he learned about like being, out of the
league. A year off sitting in the CBS studio or NFL studio, Fox studio. I can't remember which one he worked for.
Yeah.
Fox studio, watching all those quarterbacks.
Right.
Like, obviously you watch him as a coach, but he's sitting in the studio watching him and talking about him, and he's not.
And if
he's enjoying it, he's not like it's not. I mean, it's his job, but he's not like stressed figuring out how am I gonna.
Yeah,
he's not like trying to come up with a game plan against those guys. He can enjoy it and be like, oh, you know what? I'm thinking of ways that I can like how what like tell me that 100% chance that this is what he did. If you're Sean Payton and you're just unequivocally like no one can dispute this, one of the greatest offensive coaches in the history of football. Maybe he's not the best, but he's up there. I really haven't seen anyone dispute that. Tell me he's not watching Justin Herbert in LA. Yeah. Tell me he's not watching. Watch Justin Fields last year. Tell me he's not watching Josh Allen. Tell me he's not watching Lamar Jackson. Obviously, he's watching Chris Jones. And sitting there thinking,
it'd be nice to have one.
What could I do with that guy? Like, this is what my offense around him would work like. How would I drop this play for him?
Exactly.
What other plays would I want to drop for him? How else do I want to use him? He's a coach. That's what coaches do.
That's right. They live and breathe football.
Yeah.
Like that's like they literally leave. But
he probably dreamed about it.
But here's the thing, and here's like the whole Fox thing. Robert drops in here, JJ McCarthy at 12. Maybe not 12, but as we said, as far as fit, kind of read the tea leaves a little bit too for maybe some other people that have been associated with Sean Payton. One of the things that I say about that is Peter Schrager on NFL Network and on Good Morning Football, he has been gassing up JJ McCarthy also with the Denver Broncos, and as far as a fit or the fit that he would love to see. Plus, I think for a great 30 for 30, I would love to see JJ McCarthy in that building and be the one that takes down his former, head coach of, the Michigan Wolverines, and he is the one that resurrects the Denver Broncos franchise. I would love that as a 30 for 30. All right, so let's.
Or if the Chargers want him, we'll take Justin Herbert.
Right. We'll dive a little bit more, obviously, in those draft quarterbacks. Because I mean, like in a complete and honest opinion, I think the best fits are certainly Bo Nix and JJ McCarthy. I think the out of range fit, if you're asking me, are obviously those top three. So Drake May, Caleb Williams, and Jaden Daniels. So that would be those guys. But I feel like maybe some of the Michael Penix stuff to a certain degree is a bit overblown. And I also think that Spencer Rattler is a very fascinating developmental fit with Sean Payton. So, but we'll talk about that, of course, with some of those draft prospects as we get closer and closer and closer, since we're about a month away from the NFL draft. But one of the things that has kicked off officially today, Brandon, was free agency. We know that legal tampering, not illegal tampering, legal tampering. Legal tampering began Monday at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Tom Brady somewhere on a yacht in Tampa. But.
Yeah. At 10 o'clock in the morning. The Broncos did, however, make some moves. And to a certain extent, they've been kind of operating in a Houston Texans level. I mean, really, the only couple deals that they made were reuniting the 2018 Texas Longhorn defense. And why do I say that, guys? Well, that is because they brought in Brandon Jones, a very, very, very versatile safety, from the Miami Dolphins, and he was on the 2018 Texas Longhorns safety room with, Brandon, who just happened to be on that roster. None other than Caden Stearns and PJ Locke, of course. And they also went out and they signed Malcolm Roach to be a part of that defensive line, about a 290, 300-pound defensive tackle. He's got an absolute motor. They signed him to about a 2-year, $8 million contract. So kind of operating maybe the Houston Texans model on some contracts. Actually, I should say the majority of their other contracts. But those particular players, they kind of did multi-year deals with. But for those other players, Brandon, they decided to re-sign some players, key players. They re-signed Michael Burton. They brought him back at fullback. They just re-signed, as of yesterday, Adam Troutman back, and they also re-signed little Jordan Humphrey back. So if you're really talking about,
about Will Lutz, man.
Will Lutz pulling a Rainey Gregory on us, and thinking that he was going to go be a Jacksonville Jaguar, and then 5 minutes later, he pulls a fast one and he's a Denver Bronco. Which, by the way, subtle thing there. Did you get a chance to see his thing on the McAfee show when he was actually interviewed on the McAfee show?
No.
Did you get
what?
So they asked Lutz about like the decision, him going to the Broncos and so forth, and he said, he said, I really enjoyed my time with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Nice.
But so Lutz is back. Basically, the only newest additions, if I'm not mistaken, Brandon, are Malcolm Roach and Brandon Jones. If I'm
Those
not
are the
mistaken,
biggest ones.
Those are really the biggest ones.
Brandon Jones, I don't know a ton about. Malcolm Roach is interesting. Like, we didn't really talk about him at all. Obviously, he has the Saints connection, but he was, I believe, by PFF grade, which take that as you will, but the number one run defender, defensive lineman in the NFL last year. Like, he is a beast against the run, which is great. Like, that's been our weakness. We talked about it. I do think we still, we needed to make a move on the defensive line. We did. DJ Jones sticking around, somewhat surprising, but less of a massive hole. I mean, I know he kind of wasn't amazing, but he's been okay. Zach Allen has been incredible. I do think there's probably something we can still do about pass rusher, but there's still more moves that we could make in the draft. So I'm kind of happy with all the moves they've made so far. It's not really a ton. It's
not sexy.
It's not sexy, and it kind of is annoying because I feel like I continuously see why didn't the Broncos make that move every single, we can't sign every free agent. It's not possible. But every single time I see some news release about someone being signed, it's why didn't the Broncos do that? What are the Broncos doing? Especially the funniest thing to me is where I saw that the most? Every time there was a quarterback being signed. Kirk Cousins, obviously, we're not even going to talk about, but people like Gardner Minshew getting the 2 years, 20, Sam Darnold for $10 million. People were lining up and freaking out about, why didn't the Broncos do that? You wanted Sam Darnold?
I mean, you wanted
Sam Darnold in general. You wanted Sam Darnold for $10 million.
Right.
Come on.
Exactly. Sam Darnold was the one that I wanted.
It's a good thing that we didn't do that. I mean, I would have taken him, but
right.
I don't think he's the one.
Right.
He's a dude.
So as far as Brandon Jones, he's got a lot of versatility. He can play in the box. He can play in safety. He can play, he's a free roaming safety to a degree, and he hits. He is a hard hitting safety. So he's got that enforcer to him. And I'll tell you, Brandon, not to circle back a little bit too, even with Malcolm Roach, but I love the Jim Leonard idea to roll with players from that defense of 2018. if there is one of the best things possibly for chemistry and and they re-signed PJ Locke. They re-signed PJ Locke to the 2-year, basically the exact same deal. Well, actually, it was like a 2-year. What is it? Almost like a 2-year, $8 million deal that they signed for Malcolm Roach. Is kind of what they signed. What is it? Lock for. But they reunited the 2018 safety room for Texas, and like the development, the chemistry, and everything that you can work with. And I'll tell you, I learned a little bit last year from the safety room perspective from Caden Stearns, who appeared on the Let's Talk Broncos podcast, where he talked about you don't really have a strong safety, free safety room. It's actually a left safety and a right safety. So now you have this safety room now with Jones and Stearns and Locke, where Leonard can have a huge mix and match of safeties that are going to be going on, where Stearns may be the rover on a certain play, but or he is going to be the single high safety on a certain play, and then or may end up being PJ Locke, or Locke is the rover, or Jones is the rover. Like there's just a lot of mix and match and versatility that can possibly be going on. With possibly how they can use him. Because again, we got to remember from everything that we were reading up on Leonard, he's an aggressive coach. So he's going to be coming with a lot of different, variety of looks and a variety of different, scenarios. And so that really gets me excited for him and to see what he can possibly do. I agree with you. I think that they probably will maybe add a little bit more to that defense. They probably will bring, I will say, a corner into the room, not a cornerback too. And again, you don't necessarily need to look at it from the perspective of.
So,
I was going to say from the perspective of just the Russell Wilson perspective,
right,
to that they're going to punt on a quarterback. You can look at it even this way too. If they don't make any moves necessarily to bring in a true cornerback too, there's your key that they will roll with Riley Moss, which has been my expectation. I'm sure it's been your expectation that they'll probably roll with Riley Moss at cornerback too. Now, here's the fascinating one though. We were led to believe this is, and it's something I recently just thought of, and I haven't really had a chance to talk about it much on podcasts yet, Brandon. But since this is our show, I want to ask you this question, and people that are in the chat that are listening and watching us on Twitter and Facebook, and I want, and you, of course, YouTube. I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. What if the Drew Sanders to edge is a smokescreen, Brandon?
So a smokescreen for what?
Meaning they've not added anybody in the linebacker room right now. Josie Jewell signs with the Carolina Panthers, and they've not really made any moves, at least at this point. And granted, we're talking about it like as they kicked off free agency. But if they don't make any moves, if they don't make any moves to that linebacker room, would it be safe to assume that maybe they actually do like Drew Sanders maybe at that linebacker position?
I don't know. I mean, maybe. I think there's a reason. I understand why people react the way they do, but I do think that there's it's been a bit overblown. Like, yes, they're officially changed. His official position was changed. That doesn't mean that they can't use him wherever they want. Is it kind of weird to me that they would do that and then still use him at linebacker? Kind of, but I wouldn't be terrible. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they still try to find ways to kind of fit him in. I am kind of just terrified of Vance Joseph doing that again with yet another player like he did with Isaiah Simmons. Like that scares me, but that's more just because Vance Joseph is on the staff. But it's possible. I mean, I also think it could just mean that there's some linebackers in the draft that they like. They could still sign someone in free agency. There's some names still out there. We'll see. I mean, Isaiah Simmons, ironically, being one of them. And there's the connection to Vance Joseph. Would totally love that, but that's an option. Like there's some there's some options. I don't know if I'm going to.
I think
I'm not going to read into it a ton because
Yeah.
I don't think. I think
I'm
the
just
reaction to him being moved officially to that other position is a bit overblown, because just because his position card says one thing doesn't mean he can't do whatever you want to use him for.
Yeah. Well, and again, I'm just posing the question. Not necessarily hinting at it myself. But I will say the more it moves on, the more it drags on, and they don't add anybody, and they don't even add anybody in the draft. Maybe, and I'll just say this: maybe they, they don't draft a Peyton Wilson, which would be very ironic, having a Peyton and a Wilson in the room again. They draft Peyton Wilson, but they draft him, and he's a linebacker, right? Maybe they don't draft him necessarily, or really any linebacker in this draft class. Maybe it's safe to assume that maybe they either really like Jonas Griffin back there, right? And Jonas Griffin, as long as he's been healthy, he's been a pretty serviceable guy. But I agree with you. I think that, as much as we talk about the versatility of the safety room, having someone that's a chess piece that you could use at linebacker is maybe one of the best things for you, at your disposal versus, someone that you're going to just slide over at edge, if you will. So let's, do you want to talk a little bit more about the Broncos, or you want to move now?
The only other thing I was going to ask is, like, what else, what do you think, what other moves do you think we're going to make? Like, is there specifically a position or a player that's still available that you would maybe see us signing? And you can say no, but just like, if there's anyone, specifically a player that's still available that you could potentially see us going after.
I mean, obviously, I'll get your thoughts on it too, of course, but I will say I think that if there is maybe any offensive position that they'll probably sign, I would probably look more to a wide receiver, like more of a wide receiver, and that's kind of maybe one of the reasons why I'm pounding the table.
Still available, I think.
Yeah, but I was gonna say that's kind of the reasons I may be pounding the table a little bit for maybe a Michael Thomas, but pounding the table for like a guy like a Visca Chenault. So any Bus fans that are listening in the chat, I'm a Husker fan who appreciates a great player.
So Visca Chenault, that's your official answer.
I'm just gonna keep banging the table, if you will, for Visca. I like the idea of having a reclamation project at that wide receiver position, because you bring him in, it's such a low risk, high reward move that you can move on from him and it won't really mean much, and it's not going to take you at all from even adding to that room. And if you work with him, and this is the things I've said before, you work with him, you're talking about a nice little versatile weapon that you can work with, right? I mean, he's what we've said before, he's only 25 years old. You could work with him. And so Laviska is certainly one. I think on the defensive line, I don't know how much he will cost, but it's certainly a name that I think bears mentioning. And Chris Thomason actually dropped his name, I want to say it was a couple days ago. But Sebastian Joseph Day is maybe, I was going to
say that was mine.
Yeah, was the name maybe to kind of keep in mind. And I mean,
Zach Bond is no longer available.
Yeah, that was surprising. Like, of all things, he decides to go to Philadelphia, not but kudos to him. He goes to a Super Bowl contending team. But I mean, was there anybody else you were going to say though that wasn't like a Sebastian Joseph Day?
Joseph Day was kind of my main one. Obviously Michael Thomas is an option. Damn, I hate you so much because Joseph Day was mine.
I mean, I said 2. You can say 2. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's some interesting
the other position that I wanted to say maybe.
I'm trying to see if this guy's still available. He was signed to. So one of the things, and this, we talked about this last week, and the case was made for him then, but I wouldn't be too surprised if we maybe still sign another safety, mostly because
signed Jeremy Chin, apparently.
Well, not maybe Cameron Curl still available. Or we could go after corner, like Adoree Jackson is available as well. The guy I still wanted was Chidobe Awuzie, although he did sign with the Titans. I didn't realize that, which sucks. Rock Yassin is going to be kind of another one. Sebastian Joseph Day was like my main.
Kudos to Lance for
mentioning
him
but
last week.
I don't know. There's some guys like I don't think. Here's the thing. There's several options that I could see happening.
Yeah.
But I also wouldn't be surprised if we don't sign anyone else.
Right. I will say though,
or at least no one noteworthy. Like I wouldn't be surprised at all. I do think they can maybe continue to add to the defensive line, which is why I was going to say Sebastian Joseph Day. Maybe a corner. I don't know. Maybe out of the guys I mentioned, I don't really have like a specific favorite, but some of the like Rock Yassin is really interesting to me. I really liked him coming out of Temple.
Yeah, because I feel like even
I think it's more likely that barring Michael Thomas, like Michael Thomas is kind of the obvious chew-in. I think it's probably going to be on the defense. That's what I'm going to say because I don't know exactly who. And you took my Sebastian Joseph Day, and I'm not going to say a position. Other than the obvious Michael Thomas, I'm going to say if they're going to make one more move, it's going to be on the defense.
Well, and that's why I was alluding it to earlier, which I said if the best thing probably for this team, if they're going to be loading up foundationally, build your defense, do shrewd moves.
TR Tart's still available, so
TR Tart is certainly another one.
Please,
so Tart's available, and you mentioned. Joseph, you mentioned Joseph Day. I mentioned Joseph Day.
You stole Joseph Day.
But like build your defense in free agency, and then once you've built your defense, which frankly, if I was to make a prediction, I think the Broncos don't really like. I mean, I will bang the table for Laviska, just because like it's a wide receiver position, if you will. But I think if I was to make a prediction of what they will do the rest of the way, I really think they do add solely to that defensive room, and then they build that offense of youth and maybe a defensive position here and there, or one or two in the draft. But I think they build the offense solely in the draft.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else on free agency for the Broncos or
no
season for the Broncos?
Nothing really.
Let me just come up with. I'm gonna say this now because I want to coin this in advance. If we don't go after a quarterback in this draft, and we're kicking the can proverbially to next year, maybe the first person, and maybe this has already been mentioned somewhere. If it has, I haven't seen it, but I would like to officially coin the phrase "bluff for the buff."
Bluff for the buff. The other one that I
had to get it in, but now we could talk about the rest of free agency.
Well, actually, okay, I have to do this. I have to call this up. What is his contract right now? Okay, so you're gonna, if we're gonna go on this whole idea and this whole punting situation, and the Broncos maybe want to maybe not necessarily draft their quarterback in 2024, right? Well, here's a name that maybe to keep in mind as far as the free agency market, and with the idea that the Broncos will very likely have close to 100, if not over 100 million in cap space next year. Dak Prescott is an unrestricted free agent in 2025. I'm just, if we're talking pipe dream situations. So, all right. As far as the other free agency in the moves, what
was like surprising to you about the rest of free agency? Like your biggest surprise?
I will be honest. I was surprised how quickly the running backs went off the board.
That was mine. I was surprised how much money the running backs made.
Yeah, and and the thing is like maybe aside from fit, I was really impressed overall with the fits of all the top running backs in free agency. The one that I'm kind of questioning a little bit to an extent, the Austin Eckler to the Commanders.
That and the Packers signing Josh Jacobs was surprising.
Which, by the way, thank you. As a Bronco fan,
I will say thank you, but
thank you for
Aaron Jones.
Yeah,
maybe he just didn't want to be around anymore. I don't know, but Aaron Jones was a good running back for them.
Yeah.
And now he's on the Vikings, which is kind of hilarious. But no, that was exactly what I was going to say. Is I was shocked. You said how fast it kind of dried up, which was also surprising. I was just shocked how many surprisingly large deals.
We're saying large in the grand scheme of things.
Large for running backs.
Right.
Deals kind of happened in that position group because I'm team don't sign running backs in free agency.
Actually,
and it seemed like the league was kind of also aiming in that direction. And then here we go. You got Saquon, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard, I think, is low key. Like, I know it sucks that they lost Derrick Henry, but Tony Pollard for the Titans might be a great signing. Austin Eckler, which that was weird. That one was weird.
Yeah.
DeAndre Swift, like just surprise, like a lot of moves, and all of them, almost all the ones I mentioned, and actually every single signed running back, as far as I could tell, was a multiple year deal. You didn't get any of those 1 year, $8 million, the things you normally see on the running back market. Like, it was just surprising how much money was spent there, and how quickly it was spent.
To anybody in the chat, and you guys are watching on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, feel free to chime in the chat on what you guys felt like maybe was a really impressive signing or really kind of caught you off guard. I will say the thing about Tony Pollard really quick. The reason why I feel like maybe that's not necessarily as good of a fit in there is they already had Ty J. Spears there. And so unless they feel like, so like I'm curious about. So I'm really curious about the overall fit, because I feel like you would maybe want a little bit more of a bruising back, in
that makes sense.
Regard.
But the reason I say that is an interesting to me and good move. Maybe not good, because I wouldn't sign running backs, but he has a lot left in the tank because he wasn't used as much comparatively to like Zeke, how Zeke was used in Dallas. He has some tread on the tires, and he's a really good running back. And the Titans love to run the ball. So now instead of giving Derrick Henry 400 carries, they can split it between Pollard and Spears.
Yeah. So I also will say,
but that is a good point. Like, they are similar running backs. I do think Tony Pollard runs harder than he's given credit for. Like, he's not a small guy. I mean, he's not Derrick Henry, but no.
I also will give credit.
200. Yeah, go ahead.
I also will give credit to a team that we have roasted a few times here before. But just from the idea that the idea that that they're kind of a poverty franchise, if you will, but at least lately. But I at least liked the fact that the Carolina Panthers went out and spent money on an offensive line for Bryce Young. Like,
hey, good for them, man.
Good for them. I mean,
they should do that.
They needed to. I am fascinated with David Canales, what they could do also with Deontay Johnson. Now with him being traded to Carolina, Deontay Johnson must have saw the Russell Wilson deals like, nope, I'm good. All right. Oh, hey, trade me. No, the Deontay Johnson stuff was kind of like felt like that was kind of like being a soon-to-be trade anyway. Now, does the Pittsburgh Steelers maybe come up as a Cortland Sutton destination? Maybe that's something worth monitoring. Yeah, so I thought the Houston Texans were incredible. The Houston Texans were...
Dude, the Texans are going to win a Super Bowl in the next... No, yeah. I'm going to say in the next...
Oh, I just said with CJ Stroud.
4 years.
They're just so good.
Someone record that. Go ahead. Clip it.
It's literally already recorded. Josh, if you're listening,
do it.
Go ahead.
Clip it. I'm fine. I'm fine with this. Yeah. It's going to happen. They're so good. This is what you do. This is the dream. You get a great quarterback on a rookie contract. You go out and spend money. You spend all the money you can to build the team around him when the rookie is cheap, and they're doing it. Danielle Hunter, I hate you. I hate you. I hate you, Houston Texans. But damn it, it made too much sense. And you got an amazing player, even though you lost. Like they lost one of the other guys who I don't know if I would say pining for, but Jonathan Grenard. They lost him.
He went to Philly.
He went to Philly, and then they went out and got Hunter. I'm like, okay, well, that's like. Not only did you replace him in the aggregate, to quote Moneyball, like you kind of also upgraded because Hunter is just so stupid good. Mike Ford is low-key a good corner.
Shahir,
Jeff Okuda, they got the reclamation project. That could turn out interesting. They got Danico Autry, who is ageless. Damn. Joe Mixon, which was kind of surprising, that trade. Texans are...
Jack Dempster chimes in about what we think the Patriots should do.
Die. Just kidding. I don't know. What should they do? I couldn't tell you. What are they going to do? If they're not stupid, they're going to draft a quarterback at 3.
They re-signed Kendrick Bourne, didn't they? They re-signed Kendrick Bourne. I will say I'm curious what the offense is going to look like with the New England Patriots. But speaking of one of the moves that I've been clamoring for from the running back perspective, as far as bang for your buck, Moneyball style at running back, Antonio Gibson signed with the New England Patriots. I'm curious to see what he is going to do with the Patriots and what the fit will be overall there. But
I would be pouring one out for my boy if Bill Belichick was still around. With Antonio Gibson going to the Patriots, because Billy B I'm trying to come up with like a clever punny name here, but
keep in mind
Bill Belichick and the running back committee. Go ahead.
Keep in mind, Big Mike lives in the East Coast.
Man, that's insane.
Could you imagine?
Why would you do that?
How much of an influence did Bill Belichick have on that system for them to just be like, you know what, we'll trade back, we'll accumulate picks, because like
maybe the Drake May stuff is true.
Well,
that blows my mind.
And I'm telling you right now, not to say possibly like who the Minnesota Vikings could be interested for, but Josh McCown does have some ties to Mr. Drake May, as he does Sam Darnold, and stylistically, Sam Darnold fits a little bit with Drake May. Maybe they trade up to Chris.
I know a Vikings fan on Twitter that'll be very upset about that.
He's named after a superhero.
He's fighting for JJ McCarthy.
He's named after a superhero.
But the thing, like,
I love him. I
don't understand the Drake May hype. I don't get the hate though. I don't understand. Oh yeah, that was great. I don't understand. What does Drake May is good? Like, am I missing something?
It is. So okay. Not to dive too much into the draft.
I don't get it.
Not to drive,
we'll talk about it, but I don't get it.
Yeah, not to dive too much into the draft rabbit hole. But did the Justin Herbert stuff not teach us anything about about like
what Drake May looks like? Justin Herbert.
Like maybe even a better version of Herbert. Like as far as like you kind of look at it and the way that they are like mobility wise, like he may be a better athlete than Justin Herbert. Let's not. It's just to me it feels way overblown. But hey, if it's overblown to the point where he falls enough where the Broncos are within striking range,
dude.
I will have a dilemma between Drake May and JJ McCarthy.
I wouldn't. No dilemma. No dilemma for me. I like JJ. Take Drake. Take Drake. And now we can have, instead of Drew Lock rapping "Put On the sidelines, we can have Drake May rapping Drake on the sidelines. I don't want to even say how long I've been holding that one in. But just to quote myself, that I'm not actually quoting myself because that's like very arrogant, but to continue on a tradition that I've kind of started here that some people found from a couple years ago and decided to rip me on. So a few years ago when Kyle Hamilton was coming out and we picked 9, which was the year we took Pat Surtain, I basically put out there Kyle Hamilton, like I think it was after his 40, that Kyle Hamilton was so slow that no one in the top 8 should pick him.
Yeah.
As an obvious joke because I wanted us to draft him at 9. The amount of Ravens fans that found that a couple months ago and quoted me saying, this guy's so fucking stupid. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm like, dude.
You know it's a joke.
I'm joking. I'm trying to get him to fall to 9 because I want him at 9. So I'm going to say this. Drake May sucks at football.
Draft him at 12.
He puts ketchup in his coffee. I'm trying to come up with like the most disgusting stuff possible. I think ketchup thing is just like a nod to Patrick Mahomes. He can't.
He puts ketchup on his steak.
He doesn't know how to throw intermediate. It's just a blatant lie. But he's horrible, and no one in the top 11 should take him.
There was what is it? There was a thing that came out about Jaden Daniels, and someone actually called him a running back. I even did the same thing. And I was like, oh, good. Then the Broncos should draft that running, or he should fall to 12.
Even the Patriots could take Drake May. Jaden Daniels. That would also be not surprising. They should. If they trade back,
or even taking Drake May.
I mean, no, they shouldn't take Drake May. No one in the top 11 should take Drake May. He's too bad.
He's too bad. We'll talk, Big Mike. We'll talk about Bowers. Admittedly, Bowers, if they don't go quarterback, which I mean, I think it's more often than not right now they will go quarterback. But if they don't go quarterback, Bowers to me would be one of those guys that falls into the category that I would take at 12. But because he didn't participate in his pro day, I'm kind of monitoring that a little bit with his hamstring injury. But we also know the Broncos do love people with hamstring injuries. You know why? Because they have a guy in that room. Yes, if you're listening, Big Mike, with a current hamstring injury. His name, by the way, is Greg Dulcich. And
no more tight ends with hamstring injuries.
And he stinks so much that Big Mike had to rebrand to Miners Muse on Twitter. I'm just saying. As far as some other people, or I should say teams in free agency.
What do you make of real quick? What do you make of the Mike Williams stuff?
Let me phrase it this way. If we didn't have necessarily the exact same bodies of wide receivers in our room right now, I would be taking Williams in a heartbeat, like absolutely in a heartbeat. What I think is going to be fascinating to watch is what happens with T. Higgins, because I think the ideal replacement
because he
for T. Higgins
requested a trade, right?
And he was cut.
Yeah, and he was cut. Yeah.
I think the ideal replacement for a guy like T. Higgins is Mike Williams in Cincinnati. Funny enough, they both went to Clemson, but I think that the ideal fit there would be Mike Williams there.
You don't think that's already what Chase does?
But because of how things have been shaping out, the nightmare fuel of this all,
like to me, Hollywood Brown.
Well, I was just gonna say the nightmare fuel of Mike Williams is he signs with the Kansas City Chiefs, and well,
don't even put it out there. Don't even say it.
I did say it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, if I'm going to put someone in the Cincinnati to fit with what they do with Chase, I would maybe go after. I mean, there's people that I would go after first that have already been re-signed, but like Hollywood Brown and speed. I like T. Higgins, but T. Higgins, I think T. Higgins and Jamar Chase were
too similar.
Maybe not too similar. Like they still used T. Higgins well, and he was a great receiver for them. But I think they are somewhat similar. And I think Mike Williams and Jamar Chase are almost, well, they're also somewhat, I mean, I do think that Mike Williams is more of the big body guy than Jamar Chase isn't small by any means, but Jamar Chase is like,
he's like 6 foot, 6'1" or something.
He's 6 foot. He's kind of a weird mix of, he's kind of the big guy, but he's also the downfield guy.
Yeah.
And Mike Williams is kind of the, I mean, I guess it could work. But I would maybe put more speed there and let Jamar Chase use more of his size and not make him be like, he's always going to be the ridiculous catch down the boundary guy. That's just never going away. But I think if you put some more speed there and let Jamar Chase eat underneath and intermediate and still get those big shots, and like, I think that'd be nice. But anyway, turn into a Bengals pod.
Yeah, we did enough gassing of the Chiefs.
Mike Williams is surprising.
We did enough gassing of the Kansas City Chiefs earlier in the year. We're not going to try. We learned our lesson. We're not going to try and turn this into a.
I mean, they must really believe in Johnston, who had some rookie moments,
but they also had a lot of decisions to make, and the only it looks like the only one that they keep to the prominent four, or will keep at the prominent four, is Keenan Allen.
Well, and did anything happen with because weren't they going to trade Mack?
I take it back. They're keeping Khalil Mack. It seems like they're
keeping Khalil Mack.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if they do move on from Joey Bosa, that was weird. I will say the Joey Bosa thing is going to be fascinating. He's not going to go to Denver, but as far as the fascinating and fun fit, and of course it just screams San Francisco 49ers, but pairing him with the brother, like it just screams that they're just going to pair him with the brother, like and two, like they're already in state. I think they've even spoken about that they want to play together before, so it makes too much sense, right? It just makes too much sense for them, to possibly work out that way.
Chargers are weird, man. Chargers are weird. What else did they do? Did they do something else? Because like the Williams deal wasn't enough. They were still over the cap.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think they may make a decision on Joey Bosa here soon.
Well,
I know
they're
cap compliant. They're cap compliant.
They were. They must have done something minor. They must have restructured. Oh, they did. They restructured Mac. That's what they did.
Yeah.
That
but
makes sense. Okay.
As far as some of the other moves, not to dive a little bit too much into fits, and I know we talked recently about the running back position, but even though he's kind of, if you will, he's going back home, I love the fit of Saquon Barkley with the Philadelphia Eagles. I love that fit. And of course, if there's really two like really great fits and two like dream fits that kind of took shape with the running back position, it is Derrick Henry with Lamar Jackson and Saquon Barkley with the Philadelphia Eagles. They
got Bryce Huff too.
The Eagles did?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The Eagles make moves, man.
I'll tell you, the Ravens, man, that is one team I'm very fascinated with, because you get Derrick Henry. You finally get that running back that they can, take the load off of, right? With that running game and red zone. And it seems like they may be releasing Odell Beckham Jr. If they do release Odell Beckham Jr., you're also talking about a little bit more of a youthful room. And I mentioned on Sports Nonsense and Whiskey, but one of the things that I would love as a fit for Baltimore is a young wide receiver who's a bully. Because you've already got the underneath scat wide receiver, if you will, underneath speedy wide receiver with Zay Flowers, and explosive wide receiver at that. But I would love to see a guy like a Keon Coleman, Xavier Legette, one of those guys, with Baltimore, that just is a big physical, presence. I mean, because if you're truly going to go off of that identity of a physical football team,
yeah, because Rashad Bateman never really. I'm not going to call him a bust, but he kind of didn't pan out.
But also, too, I mean, it's again throwing it out there. The Baltimore Ravens were really close to trading for Cortland Sutton. Just mentioning that.
That could still happen, actually. But yeah, I'm just to talk real quick on the Saquon Barkley piece. Good for Saquon. I feel happy for Saquon because he's a fantastic running back that was just stuck in garbage.
Mm-hmm. The crap he was receiving too by
his entire career.
The crap he was receiving too by actually a fellow Giant great, by the way, was uncalled for. By the way, talking about oh, you're dead to me, and you're dead to us. Tiki Barber, coming out and saying oh, you're dead to me, you're dead to us.
Bro, Tiki, I respect you, but have you seen
what your career
that the Giants have done?
Or even in what's your career unfolded? You didn't spend your entire career with the Giants.
Yeah. But come on. You're going to say that Saquon doesn't deserve to go play for a legitimate contender after wasting away in New York?
Right.
They're horrible, just a bad team. Sorry, but Saquon, as much as, again, I wouldn't pay running backs. They gave a big deal, whatever. I wouldn't probably have done it, but I am happy for Saquon. He's a fantastic running back. I think he still has a lot left in the tank. The Eagles are a good running team. They're trying to go all in, and we'll see what happens. Seems like they say this every year, but I don't know. But Saquon, good for him. He's going to have a chance to actually compete. They could take some pressure off of Jalen Hurts. They can use Saquon maybe more in the passing game. They also got Gardner Johnson too, so they added some pretty decent players to that team. They were also in the running for Justin Simmons, which I feel like has recently dried up, but because they got Gardner Johnson. But I remember before they did that, they were in on Justin Simmons. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, I'm excited for Saquon because he's gonna be able to eat and actually be able to compete.
We'll talk about this Broncos country.
You know what's funny? Speaking of the Giants, real quick, did you see that what's this guy's name? I'm totally forgetting this Eagles running back name.
Boston Scott.
Boston Scott. Yeah, Boston Scott. The Giants were interested in signing Boston Scott. Did you see that?
Mm.
Do you know why that's so funny? Because Boston Scott, the perennial Boston Scott versus the Giants meme of every time he plays the Giants, he goes off. He has 10 touchdowns in 6 career games when he plays against the Giants, and the Giants wanting to sign him just to prevent that from happening again was so funny.
Speaking of the Giants, though, look, I don't know what they'll do at quarterback, if they'll continue with, in whatnot.
Touchdowns in 10 games, sorry.
The Brian Burns move, man. Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns for their formidable future. Whew!
But I do also sort of feel bad for Brian Burns.
No.
I mean, I get it, but he goes from the Panthers to.
Honestly, though, I feel,
but it's a good. I mean, that defense.
Honestly, though, I feel just from the standpoint of again, as I was just talking about the Panthers and them. Yeah. Them actually praising them for protecting Bryce Young. They literally, meaning the Panthers, said no to 2 first-round picks. 2 first-round picks for Brian Burns from the Los Angeles Rams. Like, you could have been in less.
They done messed up. They fumbled the bag hard.
Like you're already bare. Your cupboard is bare anyway from the what is it from the Bryce Young trade up. You could have recouped that, or at least had some capital to work with. If you actually made the Brian Burns trade, like it's just like it's just so dumb. We'll touch on the JJ and Knicks thing a little bit later.
Yeah, we have so much time to get into that.
Yeah, but I mean, I think maybe to just do a quick little answer for you, Broncos Country Daily. I would lean more to JJ McCarthy. I'm sure Brandon
I would
Manely,
definitely lean more on JJ McCarthy. 100%.
Yeah, we'll dive
1,000%.
a little bit. We'll dive a little bit much into there, but I will say I do really like Knicks a lot. My comparison for Knicks was Brock Purdy, and JJ was kind of like a mix of like the Kirk Cousins, like a very more mobile Kirk Cousins, if you will.
I don't know what to think about Bo Nix. I wouldn't take him in the first round. But yeah, if I'm taking him on day 2 or day 3, I'd rather take Michael Pratt.
But anyway,
maybe I don't know. I like him though. Like the problem is, well, not that I take Michael Pratt over him. Let me rephrase. That's not what I meant.
Brandon, we said we'll talk about it.
Let me just get this on my chest. If you're saying the difference is I have to take Bo Nix in round 2, or I can take Pratt in round 4, we'll talk about it.
Yeah,
I'll stop.
Well, we'll definitely talk about it. Were there any other moves though? As far as I will say, like back to going back to Darnold and some of that conversation. I am curious to see what's going to happen with Minnesota, and because I do like the idea of Sam Darnold there, and I know that people have thrown it around that maybe he could be the Baker Mayfield of the class and having a resurrection, if you will. And I like
I think that's true because Baker Mayfield is actually good.
But with Kevin O'Connell, I like the idea there for, a situation like that. I feel like here's my thing. And it's nothing against Kevin O'Connell because I really like him as a play caller. But I feel like if you're going to make a claim for that, not necessarily that it's wrong, it would have been had the Broncos signed Sam Darnold. Would he then become the Baker Mayfield of that cycle? Right? All right. But any other stuff that you're kind of looking out for, maybe, or that you're that kind of caught your eye a little bit with free agency?
Those were the biggest ones. Who's still available?
Real quick, for one, now that I can actually publicly say this on air, because and I know I tweeted it, so I guess it's even more public. Please know to Zach Wilson. So Broncos, if you are actually listening to this stream,
I'm out on everyone that's still available.
Literally out on every single one of them. Jimmy Garoppolo, you literally have your Jimmy Garoppolo in-house. His name is Jarrett Stidham. He also has a 2-game suspension. I'm staying away from that. He's younger. I'm staying away from Jimmy Garoppolo. There is only one Raider who is a free agent that I actually think would work well in the Sean Payton offense, and that is Hunter Renfrow. I think Hunter Renfrow would be an interesting one with the Sean Payton offense. Aside from that, I am not touching a single Raider. I'm not touching Zach Wilson. I'm not touching the rest of the bridge backup quarterback market. At this point, we're punting, and we are Riley Dixoning. Yeah, we're Riley Dixoning our way into the NFL draft and getting a quarterback.
So I was gonna say the only remaining thing that I don't really have an opinion on it. It just was kind of surprising. Was just how, I guess, little waves were made on the tackle market. Like it just feels like almost nothing happened there. Like other than Mike Onwenu getting that kind of big deal to stay with the Patriots, Tyron Smith, unless something happened and I missed it, Tyron Smith still has not been signed. Signed Trent Brown.
Yep.
Mekhi Becton still. Who knows what's going to happen there?
A new and also a new one just got onto the market too. DJ Humphries was cut.
Yeah,
so
DJ Humphries. Andres Pete, who surprised he hasn't been signed by us yet. Yeah, there's some names there that I'm kind of surprised have not been signed. So,
which, by the way,
maybe it's just because it's taking longer to get the contracts worked out. It's going to be big, specifically just because of Tyron Smith, Trent Brown too, to an extent. So we'll see.
Which, by the way, apropos to the way things have probably worked in the past, just as we say the Broncos have been so quiet and will probably remain quiet. Watch, they sign like 3 or 4 guys, maybe like low bargain deals. Watch, they sign like 3 low bargain players, tomorrow, to continue to rebolster their roster. So, all right. Well, we want to say thank you guys again for hopping on another episode of the Manly Broncos podcast. We you just caught it just at the end, Big E Bronco. But we are just getting ready to wrap up again. Thank you so much for hopping in, man. It was a great show, and we wish everybody that chimed in. Broncos Country Daily was in here. Big Mike as usual. Looked like Jack Dempster was in here as well. Obviously Robert Garcia and our Mr. Troll himself, or what does he go by? Mr. Nobody by the name of Josh Sherman was in the chat. So thank you to everybody that was in this show. We will probably, it feels fitting with free agency wrapping up, Brandon, we maybe do a mock draft next week. We kind of go back to the mock drafts, and we'll do a little bit of a mock draft situation. Dive a little bit more into the draft and everything that is going to be becoming of the future, possibly, and talk a little bit more about the future. Maybe at this point we can we dive a little bit more maybe into some of the prospects of the class, right? We dive a little bit more into the prospects, like positionally and everything. So maybe we kind of look a little bit more into the draft in that regard. We'll see. We'll talk a little bit about it more. But anyway, thank you guys again. Make sure you follow Brandon and I on our socials at Brandon Miller PO, Mr. Let's Not Tweet a Lot, myself at Cameron Parker PO, at Manly Broncos. Until next time, we wish you guys the best, and we'll see you guys next Wednesday.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame out. So high, I might never come down.